The harvest moon is right around the corner, so this week is that final push in the garden. So stay tuned for a really nice harvest. In many zones across Canada, North America, the world even, harvest moon signifies the end of the growing season and that real big final push to get everything in before winter comes. And I know we don't want to think about that winter's coming, but it is. And it's hard to believe today when I'm actually sweating. It's like 22 degrees. But the nights are getting colder. We were 9 degrees Celsius last night, and we're starting to see the dieback in things. As you can see behind me with these beans, we're ready to harvest these. Not right now because it's early in the morning and we got to wait for the dew to dry off. But today is going to be the big push to get as much as we can out of the garden before the harvest moon on Friday. So one thing that we have done quite well on staying on top of this year is harvesting our herbs. Now, as you can see here behind me, the stevia, okay, we're a bit behind on that, but that's okay because we're going to harvest a big amount off that to put in the dehydrators today. But our parsley, as you can see here, not much left. We've been really kind of going strong on it. Same with our celery. Over the time we've just been harvesting and harvesting. So a lot of these items behind us are not going to come out today. We've got our sugar beets right here. They're not ready. You're waiting for frost pretty much to pull those out. And all the other herbs and celery, that sort of stuff, our kale, it's going to keep going because it's a hardy cold season crop. So most of what you're seeing in these raised beds, besides those dried beans and tomatoes, is really going to stay here. We're not worrying so much about this. It's more the in-ground stuff. And I'm going to show you right now just how bad the in-ground stuff has got. We have been terrible on weeds, and we had the best of intentions of staying on top of the weeds, but life gets in the way, other things happen, and it is what it is. So who knows what's going to be under all these weeds? As I just mentioned, weeds have gotten immensely ahead of us. Behind me, believe it or not, is garden. We have over here potatoes. There's our old bean trellises. This behind me actually is kind of a weed bed, but I have purposefully allowed some of it to grow. This is where we had our garlic, which we pulled out in June. Best of intentions of planting it with something else, but we didn't. But have no fear because I let the wild parsnip grow. So we're going to harvest that and see what we can get. That's one of our first jobs. No, not our first job. That's actually going to probably be our third job. First, we're going to go harvest lima beans and tomatoes because they are an absolute disaster. Well, not the lima beans, but the tomatoes are an absolute disaster. So one of our first stops out here in the garden is the San Marzano tomatoes. Again, I've got 2 buckets, as you can see here, and hopefully that's going to be enough, but they are all over the ground. They're falling off. That's just the cold temperatures and everything. The plants are dying back, and they're having a hard time keeping this amount of fruit on, but that's okay. We have made so much stuff with these over the last 2 weeks, 3 weeks now, I guess, and I have tons in the freezer, but we don't want to waste any of these, so we're going to get them all harvested and we'll keep pumping stuff out. Well, my 2 buckets are almost filled, and that's just what was on the ground. So I'm going to go and get another bucket and keep on picking. So there's our 3rd bucket off of the San Marzanos. Not quite full, but have no fear. There's more tomatoes elsewhere to add to top that up. But there are still plenty of tomatoes still to come on these plants. They are still loaded. There's probably more than those 3 buckets still to come. And this week, we've got some 26 and 27 degree weather, which should ripen these up a treat. Our San Marzano tomatoes are all done, and now we're on to our lima beans. This was an interesting project for us this year, and to be honest, we were a little bit concerned in August when there was just nothing. Tons of pods, but no fattening with the bean inside. And then we did a little bit of research, found out they don't like to be dry, so we started watering, and boom, they started going. So I haven't really looked at these too much. We want to make sure that we save some for seed, so we need to leave some on the vine here. For future use, but I do want to get some and try and harvest them. So let's take a look and see if we can find any that are ready to go. This is our 2nd year attempting lima beans. First year we got nothing. So we planted them earlier this year, and look at this. We've even managed to get some that are going to be for seed, which is fantastic. But you can see here, see those little bubbles? There's beans in there. So we're going to get some of these harvested because I personally would really like to get some into the freezer, and these are so prolific. I mean, it's piled with beans. They're everywhere. So we're going to see what we can pick off of these. As you can see here, it's probably about a 15 foot row. And I'm curious to see what we get off of this. And hopefully there's enough that will be able to be saved for seeds for next year. So here's one I've picked off, I'm pretty sure is good. We're gonna open it because, oh my goodness, they're a little tough to open. But I just want to show you. So inside, maybe, is lima beans. Look at that. Super, super excited about this. They're so good. Oh my gosh. I have to admit, I've never had fresh lima beans. I've only had frozen. They taste almost like peas, but a lot bigger. Anyways, back to harvesting. But I just wanted to show you what was inside these pods. That is one of those buckets that you put in your sink when you're washing dishes. And it's almost full. And that was only down one side of these lima beans. All right, so we are on to the parsnips. It is time to feed the bunnies, and we're going to feed them the tops of these wild parsnip. Now, one thing I will say, if you are harvesting wild parsnip, definitely watch where you're harvesting it from. Roadsides often are sprayed. You don't want it from there. But if you have it on your property and you happen to know that it hasn't been sprayed, go for it because they are tasty, 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 and harvesting them helps get rid of the population. So good gloves are essential. Wild parsnip causes a reaction if you get the sap on you to the sun. Photos, I don't know. I'll write it down below. So you need to have proper gloves. I usually wear sleeves. I've gotten it on me before. I've blistered up. It's not the end of the world, but you do need to be careful. So we're going to get these out of the ground. As you can see, there is quite a few kind of scattered around in this garden. I know maybe it's not the best idea to have let them keep going, but I'm going to harvest these now and hopefully get enough for us as well as rabbits out of this jungle of a weed bed. So it doesn't necessarily grow super straight and wonderful, but all of those are gorgeous parsnip fingers. And basically what we're going to do is we're going to cut off the tops and feed them to the rabbits. Oh, look. I scraped it a little bit, but in the fridge it'll keep just fine. Broke the end as well. Would have been a beauty. Anyways, I'm not going to bore you with the details of harvesting all of these, but I am going to show you at the end just what we got out of our garlic bed from earlier this year. So these have only been growing really since mid-June when the garlic got big enough that I couldn't pull them out. One thing you want to do when you're harvesting parsnip, wild parsnip, any parsnip really, is you want those first year plants. You want to either be harvesting them now in the fall or first thing in the spring. We harvest then as well. I think we have a couple videos on that. If so, I will link them above. But it's a great, quote, free harvest. Look at that beauty. If I put that next to my head, that is a mighty big parsnip. Really, really nice. Yes, it's got some legs. I'll just take those off. It's going to be wonderful. It smells like fresh parsnip. All right, so you can see from my bucket here, I've harvested a decent amount. Not as much as I would have liked, but as you can see, there is still a ton more in this area of the garden that need to get dug out. But I am going to pace myself. It's not calling for any frigid, horrible weather, and that really doesn't matter for parsnips anyways. But what I'd like to do is just harvest enough that I can feed the tops of the bunnies, and then the next day I'll harvest some more and feed the tops of the bunnies. So I've already fed everybody, so I don't really want to harvest anymore and waste the greens. It's not a requirement to harvest them now, but I do think this is a very good sized bucket. Definitely some really, really nice ones. Also some nice little ones, which would be great for like parsnip fries, things like that. Not going to do any sort of preserving with these. I'm just going to bag them up and put them in the fridge. I find parsnips keep for a very long time that way. I don't even wash them, just put them in as they are and pull them out as I need them. Now we're going to move on because right next to where I was digging those parsnips is my all red potatoes. and they need to come out. They've been dead and died back for months now, but they were so covered in weeds, we just left them. You can see here the weeds are atrocious. So first step is going to be to uncover the row so that we can get these dug up. I really hope there's some decent growth under there, because we love these potatoes and we neglected them, and we only planted the one row because we had intentions of planting another row and we never got an area cleared to do that. We planted all of our other potatoes first and they just kind of got left in the box. So hopefully we have a decent harvest under all these weeds. There's a row of potatoes all the way along here, and it's now uncovered. Yay! Unfortunately, there is now a big pile of weeds in the one spot that I'd managed to clear, but that's okay. Once I get the wheelbarrow in, that'll work. We'll get that out of there. These are very exposed. There was mulch on these, but obviously it's deteriorated and gone to the wayside. That's a really big one right there. And we do have a little bit of probably vole damage of some description on some of them, but it looks like they were quite prolific. I'm curious as to whether they're just at the top or whether there's some further down. So let's get digging. I'm going to have to take you just to show you this. Look at the beauties in there. Absolutely gorgeous. Excellent. These are gorgeous this year. We're slowly improving the size too. These were a little bit smaller before, but look at these, and no scab, no nothing. Wonderful. Got the row done. Amazing, amazing. Look at these, look. And there's quite a few that are big like this. This is awesome. This is the best potatoes I think we've ever grown. I'm not sure if it's just a really good potato year or we're getting better at it, but these are what I like. Many of you know I don't like little potatoes. I can't stand cleaning and cutting up little potatoes. So big potatoes are where it's at for me, and these are such an improvement over last year. Now, it's a little sad that we only did the one row, but I'll show you right here. The row still produced a lot. We had one gap, which would have been one of the seed potatoes that we put in. Obviously didn't do so well. Maybe it rotted, hard to say, but definitely a gap there where it didn't produce anything. And then as we get more down to the end here, where you're going to see all the mint is a menace in this garden. And we keep leaving it because we do use it, we dehydrate it, we use it for teas, but there's a lot of mint on this property. But that's another story, another day. So we're gonna leave these out in the heat here for a little bit to dry off. They actually came out very, very clean, to be honest. But we're gonna still give them some time here, and I'll gather them up in about an hour. But until then, we are going to move on to harvesting some peppers and some eggplants. So today's harvest is tied into the harvest moon. We're reaching the end of the growing season for us. I mean, yes, we've got a couple more weeks that could be good weather, or it could turn on a dime. And that's one thing that we are focusing here, is getting as much as we can out of the garden while the getting's good, because I don't want to have to deal with covering all of this and covering all of that when the frost does come. So we may get 2 more weeks of growing season. That's why you're going to see throughout this video a lot of stuff is still producing, and we're not pulling it out. We're just harvesting the parts that are ready to harvest so that we know we won't lose that at least. Anything else is going to be a bonus. We are about to go in to harvest our peppers, and it is full of weeds. You can't even see the peppers. But if nothing else, this proves that you can grow a lot of food without the pristine garden. Weeds are everywhere, and it's a battle. And I'll be honest, when it comes down to either preserve it or go pick the weeds, obviously we preserve, so the weeds just keep growing. We tackle them quite a bit at the beginning of the year, and we always have the best of intentions of seeing it through, but everything else gets going, and it always happens every year that we end up overran with weeds. Then they go to seed, and then you start the cycle all over again next year. So it's not going away. We're learning to live with it. Yes, I know, it's hard to believe, but there are peppers in here. Oh, there you can see a red one. I'm curious. I haven't looked at this in probably about 2 weeks, I guess. So I'm curious as to how many are in here. I put cages on the ones that were doing really, really well. There's a second row back here. I think it was just too shaded. I mean, you can see right now we're 1 o'clock, 1:30. I don't know exactly the time, but and it is in full shade, and it will be for the rest of the day pretty much. So definitely wasn't the best location for peppers. We won't be putting them here again. This space is actually probably going to become a chicken run, but you got to have learning curves. Not bad. Decent sized basket. We got quite a few. A decent little harvest. I will admit the plants need water badly. They probably need to be weeded badly. But at this point in the season, I'm not going to worry about it. We're going to get what we get. Nice thing about these Tolly's Sweet Italian frying peppers is they're great green as well. So if it gets close to a frost and we think we're going to need to pick them, we don't mind because we'll eat them green. But it is nicer to have them turn red. So now comes a bit of an exciting harvest for me. It's our eggplants. Now, if you've been watching some of our garden tours along the way, you'll know these eggplants were ridiculously slow this year. I mean, we thought for sure we weren't getting any, just gonna pull them out. We didn't get very many last year either, so we thought maybe it was because we save our own seed, maybe it was just not so great. But this year, our plants started amazing from our own seed, and we got them out in the garden, and then it just stalled. It wasn't very warm, then it was really dry, and then boom, this fall they have gone bananas. Now we've harvested a couple eggplants off of these for just general eating, but we haven't really done a big harvest off them. Now these eggplants, they're ping tongue eggplants, and they freeze amazing. All we do is dice them up, put them on a cookie sheet, flash freeze them, put them in a bag, then we just pull them out as we need. We've even eaten them like 2 years old out of the freezer, and they've been great. So for, you know, for roasting or stir fries or that sort of thing. We made moussaka out of one. I think we have a video on that. But anyways, we're going to see, because I haven't really looked deeply at these, but I know that there's going to be quite a few. And that's good because we need some more because we didn't have a great harvest last year. So let's get looking to see what we've got. Well, I have to say that is even better than I was expecting. Love these eggplants, honestly. And there's at least this again on there. A lot of them were about, like, you know, 4 or 5 inches. I did pick some that maybe had a bit more growth to it, but at least then I've got enough to really make something. I might do some pickled eggplant, and we definitely want to put some in the freezer. So this is a really, really nice harvest for that. And I do think in another week we'll probably pick the same again. I did manage to leave probably 4 or 5 on the vines for seed, because you need them to get really, really, really ripe in order to get viable seeds. So I left them there. We're going to forget about them and hopefully remember not to pick them next time. So anyways, that's another thing harvested.
It's time to harvest some of our dry beans. One thing about our bean growing endeavor is we've switched to primarily pole beans because, as I said, it keeps them up off the ground where they dry and they stay dry. So where we live, if we don't grow pole beans, it's very hard to get a good harvest of dry beans because the plants tend to die back, get dew on them, because that's what happens as you get into September and you get to the end of the season. And once they get that on them, basically the pods rot and we end up losing a lot of our beans. But as you can see here, we're going to get a pretty decent harvest of dry beans off of these plants.
So these Neckar Gold, I think that's what they're called. We'll write it down below. These are like the San Marzanos of beans in my mind. They're amazing. They produce tons of green, or well, are actually yellow, fresh beans, but also, as you can see, tons of dry beans, which is awesome. And to top it all off, we're getting all these amazing dry beans, and they've started producing a fall crop of fresh beans.
So another thing we're going to harvest a little bit of is our Jerusalem artichokes, or sunchokes. So we planted these here in the spring, and they've gone a little crazy, but I've only pulled up one plant. And I didn't even really dig through, and I've gotten that many. So I'm going to pull up one more just to see what we end up with. So this week's harvest has really happened throughout the week, and I work a full-time job. So even though I have been out here harvesting a little bit while I can, usually in the evenings or kind of at lunch, that sort of thing, I haven't been out here helping as much as I would like, and as we get going on some things such as our bigger potato harvest and that sort of stuff, I'll definitely be out doing that as well as the cleanup. But it just, like Stephanie said earlier in the video, we're trying to get as much stuff that's ready now out of the garden so that it's not hanging out there and then we get a frost that we're not expecting.
All right, so as stated before, I've done a horrible job of keeping the weeds out of our potatoes this year. And I'm on to our all blues. You just saw me harvest our all reds. Now I'm harvesting the all blue potatoes. And yeah, we like our colors around here. And there'll be a video at some point in the future explaining why that is. But I have managed to clear out half of our all blue patch. And basically we had 2 rows that went the whole 30 feet of the garden. And then we had a little partial row. So I'm about halfway. I've still got about 15 feet left that needs to be weeded. But we're going to harvest at least the bits that I've gotten uncovered. And believe me, that weeding was a lot of work. Maybe next year. I'm going to file it away in my brain here that next year I'm going to do better on keeping the weeds at bay. But let's show you where we're at. And then let's get into the fun bit of harvesting. I really hope that some of these are just as big as the all red ones because they were just so fantastic. And all blues, basically same type, just different color. The all blues, what we have removed the weeds of is all harvested. We got some nice ones, nothing compared to the all reds, but still great variety to grow. I'm really curious to see how much is produced. But right now, we're taking a moment to sit, relax, and sort through them. Basically, anything that got cut or sliced when we were harvesting, i.e. this one that I stabbed with the thingy, even though it was a nice one, that's going into the needs to be eaten sooner than later. And then everything else that's littler, we're putting into a separate bucket. Again, these won't keep well, so we're going to either eat them or the chickens are going to have them. But basically, that's where we're at.
So there's the harvest so far of the good ones, plus 1 all red that we just happened to find in here. We have a few there in the one that you can see are all sliced up that we have to eat soon, and some small ones. Next up is Cherokee Trail of Tear Beans. You can see there's still some life left in these plants, but they are absolutely loaded, which is great because they are black bean. And we are definitely glad we made the switch to these last year. But let's get picking. We've amassed quite a collection of bean pods off these Cherokee Trail of Tear Beans, but there's still lots more. So the one thing about these kind of pole beans is you will have to do multiple harvests to get all your dry beans, but that's all right. So we'll be back.
All right, the day is passing. We are, I don't know, probably 6:30. We've decided we're going to go for it with the rest of these lima beans because we think we can handle the challenge of getting those all, what's it called? Shucked and into the freezer. So we're going to get the rest of them off there because we're just really curious as to how many we're going to get off of these. The one thing I didn't mention about this 14 foot of trellis is it's only 6 plants. It is wild how productive these are. Just wait until we show you at the end how many we got. So you can see there what I mean about how prolific this is. And we've already got some that we've picked off this one, but it's amazing. And when you get one like that, it's so easy to harvest because it's just boom, done. Oh, and look, there's another group right next to where I just picked those. Honestly, these are a win. We are going to be growing a lot more of these in the future. So stay tuned for that.
Another decent harvest. That little white bucket is pretty much over half full. But you can see down here in the corner, we've also started our dry lima bean harvest. And I think if the weather holds on the first little bit of October, we're going to get a pretty decent harvest of these. Nice part about these lima beans, they're a little slower than the common beans, or the more familiar beans to get to the production stage. But they're definitely heavy producers. And you can use them both as the green, which we're going to freeze, or you can let them become dry beans and still use them the same way. But the added bonus, at least in my mind, is They're a completely different species from the common beans, so this is a nice alternative to add to our bean production. So next up, we're going to tackle a little bit of the squash patch. So this is Canada crookneck squash, and you can see a few ripe squash hiding out in there. We're going to do this delicately and sort of pick individuals out because we can actually see them this year, which is awesome. But this won't be a full harvest. This is only going to be partial. Well, we got 10 that are definitely plenty ripe enough to come off the vine. There's at least that many more, and that's always hard to tell because we didn't want to go digging around and pulling the vines up. So we're going to leave the rest of it for now because we're supposed to have some pretty nice weather in the next couple weeks. So fingers crossed we get at least 10 or 15 more of these.
Believe it or not, this is squash patch number 2. This is our Kershaw squash, and though it may not look great, just wait till you see these beauties. Wow. Now, that's a squash.
And there's several more.
But not only is that a squash, but, and there is another incredible squash. These guys produce so much poundage for us. Look at that. Wow.
Slugs.
Slugs all over it, but I'm glad we're getting these out of here because it's time.
It's time.
Not too bad. 7 so far. There definitely was a couple more small ones in there that we're going to leave for now. And it's really hard in all those weeds to kind of see what is in there. There could be more, but still might only be 7. But boy, the poundage on these is unbelievable. I can't wait to weigh them and find out how much they are. But as you can see, it's starting to get dark. This is the whole point of that harvest moon, is to be able to harvest later into the day. So we might be putting that to the test today.
Well, there you go. There is our harvest on the eve of the harvest moon. This is what we've harvested, and there's more in the gardens. There's probably at least this much again because we still have yet to harvest a lot of our potatoes. There's still more squash. There's more, and if we get good weather for the next 2 weeks, we should definitely be able to bring in this much at least. It can be done. You can grow an exorbitant amount of fruits and vegetables at home. They're very healthy, very productive, and it can amount to a lot. So the next part of this whole process is just that, figuring out how we're processing all this or storing it, because most of what you see in front of us here is food for the winter. So stay tuned because there will be more discussions on that topic.
Well, as you can see above me, the moon is out. It's getting late. There's still a whole lot more to come out of this garden this week, but that's okay. This is the time of year where you're really putting stuff away, and that is the whole point of what we're trying to show you here.